Hello and welcome to our third session of the ongoing online talk series on Assamese language and linguistics, organized by Kuhipath in collaboration with International Documentation Center for Endangered Indigenous Languages and Cultures of Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee University, Ranchi. I am Priya and I am a research scholar in the Department of Linguistics, University of Delhi. Today, I'd like to invite Dr. Hemanga Dutta from the Department of Linguistics and Contemporary English, English and Foreign Language University, Hyderabad, to talk about the phonetics and phonology of Assamese. Dr. Datta did his master's and PhD in linguistics from Jawaharlal Nehru University in Delhi. He attained his postdoctoral from MIT Boston with Fulbright Nehru Fellowship. Dr. Datta's research interests are phonological theories, loanword phonology, phonetics phonology interfaces, and social linguistics. Dr. Datta has published 5 international books and more than 30 research papers in internationally acclaimed journals and publications. He has also received SM Katre Award in 2006 and has been awarded various prestigious scholarships and fellowships. Now, I'd like to request Dr. Datta to take over from here. Dr. Datta, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for your kind words, Priya. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of Kuhipat, Saurav, Kosika, and Priya, and the members of International Documentation of Center for Endangered Indigenous Languages and Culture, Dr. Shamaprasad Mukherjee University, Ranchi. I really appreciate the initiative that you guys are carrying out. It's a good initiative for the people of Assam, Northeast, and the whole India to know about the different aspects of linguistic aspects associated with our Assamese language. Um, Today's talk will be on phonetics and phonology of Assamese. This is the roadmap of the lecture. First, I think many new learners will be there who don't have much background information about linguistics, especially phonetics and phonology. So I'll be dealing with the basic aspects and tenets of phonetics science in general. And then I'll be coming to the main topic, that is Assamese phonology and the phonetics. So in Assamese, I'm going to discuss about the phonological description, and that is assimilation in Assamese, aspiration, spirantization process in Assamese, gemination in Assamese, reduplication in Assamese, loan phonology in Assamese, followed by orthography, phonology, and consistencies in Assamese. Keeping in mind the needs and aspirations of the learners, I'll be moving very slow and I will make my lecture very simple and easy to comprehend. So if you have any questions and doubts, you can ask me later and you can email me so that you can clarify the doubts. And since it is a very technical field, all the sort of is asked me to speak in between. So I can speak, but I'll be speaking very simple English for you so that you don't have any problems in comprehending. So in question answer session, I can answer any questions for you. So what is phonetics and phonology? Those people who are from linguistics background, they don't need any introduction to phonetics and phonology. But those people who are from Assamese language, they may be interested to know why is phonetics so important, why they are giving so much importance to phonology in linguistics. So you should remember phonetics is one of the sub-disciplines of linguistics which is devoted to the study of speech sounds in terms of articulation, transmission, and reception. If you study the articulation, that means it is mostly the part of articulatory phonetics, as how we articulate the speech sounds with the help of the speech organs. That is the main concern of articulatory phonetics. Once we do the speech sound travels through the medium of the air particles, and which can be captured through the medium of the spectrograms, and it comes under acoustic phonetics, that is the phonetics of transmission, and how we receive the speech signals should be.
Hello.
Hello?
Sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Datta, but your voice is not audible. Could you just adjust your
Okay.
mic, please?
Am I audible?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Now you
Okay.
are.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
switch off my fan. Okay. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, so what we are
Oh,
saying that phonetics is mostly the speech science, which is devoted to the study of speech sounds in terms of three principles, that is articulatory, acoustics, and auditory. The first is how we produce the speech sounds with the help of the speech organs, that comes under articulatory phonetics, and how the speech sounds are transmitted through the air particles and which can be represented in the spectrographic representations. It comes under acoustic phonetics, and how the speech sounds are received by the human ears. This is known as auditory phonetics. So you should remember phonetics get three components: articulatory, acoustic, and auditory. In the same way, how can we draw a line of demarcation between phonetics and phonology? That is the main concern. Some people try to claim that phonology and phonetics are two separate disciplines. Some people try to claim that phonetics and phonology are, you know, two sides of the same coin. So the different aspects are associated with phonetics and phonology, whereas phonetics is mainly concerned with the physiology of the speech sounds. Phonology is mainly concerned with the functional attributes of the speech sounds, as how speech sounds are organize, how the speech sounds are functioning in a prosodic domain within the phonotactics of a particular language. It is called phonology. So now if we look at the modern approach of phonetics phonology interface, especially Robert Kitchener 1998 model, they say that whatever phonological theories we are expressing, or whatever phonological theories we are trying to postulate, all these phonological theories are based on some kind of empirical phonetic findings. So phonetics and phonology cannot be dissociated. And if we just uh, collect the data, run, collect the generalized data, and we don't generalize, then there will be no uses. So from the phonetic data, we have to generalize theory. So there's a concept called interfaces of phonetics and phonology. So what I have said so far, that phonetics and phonology are two components of linguistics, whereas phonetics emphasizes on the physiology of the speech sounds. Phonology tries brings into fore the functional domain of speech sounds. So let's see. This is a picture of human speech apparatus. You can see here the airstream, phonation, and oronasal. There are three different concepts you need to remember uh, in the study of phonetic science, that how the speech sounds are produced. Speech sounds if a question arises, what do you mean by speech? So, is it possible to define speech, produce speech without the uses of air? It is certainly not possible. So, the speech sounds are nothing but the modified air. So, whenever we take air in and air out, this process is known as egressive and ingressive and egressive. When the air from the outer environment goes inside our body, it's called ingressive, and when the air goes out of the human inner system to the outer environment, it is called egressive. So mostly, since the lungs are used in the modification of air, or since lungs are used as the initiator of the speech sounds, that's why it's called pulmonic airstream mechanism. So in pulmonic egressive airstream mechanism um, is used in mostly 90% plus languages of the world. So when this is called pulmonic egressive. Pulmonic ingressive sounds are mostly the non-linguistic sounds, are pulmonic ingressive sounds. So when we move to the process of phonation, phonation is nothing but the activity or action performed by the glottis, or the action performed by the two vocal cords that is placed in the larynx or the voice box. That is in some adult males, it's visible as a Adam's apple. So you can see that there are two vocal cords in the larynx, and depending on the position of the vocal cords, we can determine whether a sound is voice sound or a voiceless sound. If the vocal cords are wide apart and produces no vibration at all, then the sounds are voiceless. And when the vocal cords come closer together, producing vibration, it's called the voice sounds. And when the air goes, so it's depending on the vocal cord size, we can determine the pitch value of the person. So here it is associated with the fundamental frequency. Fundamental frequency means the rate at which the vocal cord vibrates is the fundamental frequency, and the fundamental frequency determines the pitch of a person. So if we consider the voice quality of a child, and if we consider the voice quality of an adult male and adult female, so we can see that the voices are different. The reason of the differences in the voices can be attributed to the size and length of the vocal cords. So it is very interesting phenomenon. Once the air goes out, you can see the palate here. So it's the velum. So depending on the position of the velum, a sound can be oral sound or a sound can be nasal sound. So in the nasal sound, the sound can travel from the nostrils. It comes out through the nostrils, and the oral sound, the sound comes through the oral cavity. So in the tongue, you can see the tongue is very important component of speech production. Different parts of the tongue are involved in the production of speech sounds. So in the tip of the tongue, the blade of the tongue, or the back part of the tongue. Then the lips are also very important production of speech sounds. Then different parts of the palate, they are also responsible. If you see the palate, this is অসমীয়াত তালু বুলি কয়, palate, talapia. So you can see here the hard palate, soft palate, all these things. So when you produce a sound ear, the hard palate is used. Whenever you produce a sound ka, the back of the tongue, the velum is used. So in this way, you should remember different places of articulation. And these places of articulation is nothing but the speech organs. So speech organs, you should remember the speech organs are mostly the speech is a superimposed phenomena. So all the speech organs are involved in other kind of processes. So like mostly the lungs are involved in the production of speech, the inhaling and exhaling, but production of speech is a superimposed phenomena. In the same way, tongue is used for the sake of taste, but tongue is used for the sake of speech sounds also. So speech is called the superimposed phenomena. So if you see, I have already explained to you the vocal cords position. The vocal cords at rest in the first picture, vocal cords at rest is the voiceless sounds you can produce. And when producing, sometimes the voice sounds, the vocal cords come closer together, and we produce the voice sounds. So this is the phonation process I have already explained. Then comes the oronasal process. In the first process, you can see the velum is lowered. The velum is lowered, and it blocks the air to travel from the nostrils. And so the air is traveling only through the oral cavity. So it's the oral sounds are produced. And the second example, the soft palate is lowered. What happens? So the air can travel through the nostrils. So it is creating the nasal sounds. The oral nasal process is also very important. Thereby, it's the distinction between oral sounds and the nasal sounds. In English, we have ma, na, nga is the nasal sounds. In Assamese, Assamese also, we have only three nasal sounds: bilabial, alveolar, and velar nasal sounds. But in other languages like Malayalam, other Tamil, they have more nasal sounds, like the retroflex nasals are there, palatal-alveolar nasals are there. So there are different nasals are there. Um, okay, so manner of articulation. Now I have already given you the picture of the speech organs. So how the speech organs make contact with the passive articulator, active or articulators make contact with the passive articulator is very interesting. So this is nothing but a kind of stricture. Stricture means the way the active articulator makes contact with the passive articulator. And the place means the speech or the which part of the articulator is involved in the production. So as you can see in the slide, the manner of articulation refers to the way the articulators are set so that the resonance effect is possible. The place of articulation is the description of the place where the obstruction in the vocal tract takes place. So we have got two kinds of sounds. One is the vowel sounds, which are produced with no constriction in the vocal cord. That means no constriction means no obstruction. Whenever you produce a vowel sound, there is more it's sonorant and there's a continuity. So there is no obstruction in the passage of the vowel sounds. So vowel sounds are essentially voiced. So mostly you should remember the vowels, then laterals, rhotics, approximants, they are all nasals, they are all voice sounds. Among the obstruents, that is under the plosives, fricatives, and affricates, they can be either voiced or voiceless. So before we can see the consonants, consonant sounds produce the close articulation going from completely together to only approximating. When the vocal cords are wide apart, consonants are voiceless. When they are closely together and vibrating, consonants are voiced. So we have already defined what is the voice and the voiceless. So for instance, if I produce a sound, plosive sound, this is actually pa because it is followed by a, so we can hear only this. This is the pa sound, and if the b, 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 so this is the ba. So if you produce the ba sound, you can hear the buzzing effects. So the vocal cords are creating vibration. Um, Now see, what are the vowel sounds? So mostly this is from the English. I have given the example, then I'll move to Assamese. So vowel sounds are determined on the basis of three criteria. First is the height of the tongue or the openness of the mouth. So this is called height of the tongue. So we have got the high mid, low, all this you can say close, half open, open. So in this way, the height of the tongue determines. So if I produce a sound E, the you can say E, the distance between the palate and the tongue is very less. That's why it is close. But if I say E, and if you say A, it is moving, the distance is more. And if you say ah, the distance is more. So it is a, but if you say oo, the distance is again closer, not much. But if you say oh, the distance is core. So the height of the tongue determines the area of the mouth that is the highest part of the tongue, or the general area of the mouth in which the vowel is made. This gives this category front, central, and back. So which part of the mouth? Is it the front? So if you say the front, E is the front part of the mouth is used. The central part, the back part of the mouth. The third component, which is very important, is also it talks about the plus minus round orifice. Whether if you say E, you can see that lip movement is spread. But if you say oo, the movement of the oo is rounded. So these are three components on the basis of which we can determine the vowel sounds. So the consonant sounds, place of articulation. Consonant clouds are classified according to the three dimensions: voicing, manner of articulation, and place of articulation. So if I have to define the sound pa, so I have to say voiceless, bilabial, plosive. So voiceless is a voicing laryngeal property, bilabial is a place of articulation, and plosive is the manner of articulation. So what is bilabial? Bilabial sounds you can see from the pictures. When the bilabial, that means the sounds are produced when the upper and the lower lips come together to constrict the airflow out of the mouth. So bilabial, so English has bilabial sound, PB, Assamese has bilabial sound, if I say pola, ball, so the first sound is the bilabial sound. The nasal sounds ma is also bilabial. If I say ma, so this is a bilabial sound. Then comes the labiodental sounds. Labiodental sounds are produced when the lower lip touches the upper teeth. So you can say f, v. This is the lower lips and the upper teeth are involved in the production of labiodental sounds. Assamese doesn't have the labiodental sounds in the phonemic inventory. That's why if the loan word, we borrow the loan words from English to Assamese, like the if you say fan or the father, with most of the Assamese speakers have problems in the pronunciation of this words because fur they don't use, and instead of fur they substitute the bilabial aspirated plosive, that is pa. So fan will be pan, father will be padder. In the same way, va will be bha. So if it's a van, they will, as many speakers will produce as van. Have, they will say have. So this is very much useful in the language pedagogy also. Whenever teaching of phonetics to the students, it plays a very important role in learning a language accurately, especially the pronunciation and the accent system. Then comes the dental sounds. Dental sounds involve the tongue tip, that is active articulator making contact with the upper teeth to form a constriction. The English has the sound, the, all the. This is a dental, but the symbols are not here, so it is dental sounds. Thick, both, the, rather, tap, all these things are called dental sounds. Then comes alveolar. Alveolar is mostly the n, the sounds are alveolar. Then English an is alveolar, sa is alveolar, z is alveolar. So Assamese has the alveolar sound like if I say toka, money. The toka is alveolar. T. Then if I say zabor, z is alveolar. If you say sari, this is S, sari is also alveolar. If I say lora, the la is also alveolar. So if I say room, or Assamese word, you can say rati. So this is also alveolar. So in this alveolar sounds are very much there. So the post alveolar, if you move ahead of the alveolar sound, post alveolar means after alveolar, are articulated with the tongue near or touching the back of the tongue, alveolar region, farther back in the mouth than the alveolar consonants, which are at the ridge itself but not as far back as the hard palate. So English examples like should, even English, shaw, brush, vision, this is called alveolar sound. Um, then comes palatal sounds. Palatal sounds are made with the tongue body. The tongue body rises up towards the hard palate in your mouth to form an effective constriction. It's the hard palate is involved in the production of this is like yeah, yes, yellow, yeah. These sounds are called palatal sounds. Then the velar sounds, the back part of the tongue. A velar consonant is a consonant that is pronounced with the back part of the tongue against the soft palate, also known as the velum, which is the back part of the roof of the mouth. So English na, ingma is going, uncle. So the in English words kite, good, is a bug, all these are velar sounds. Then the glottal sound, we have the glottis. The glottal sounds are produced by putting pressure on the airflow in the glottis by closing the closing vocal cords. In English, two glottal sounds are present. The glottal stop up, which replaces t, phenolphoneme in words as the found some accent like cockney, and the voiceless glottal fricative ha. This sound is indicated was like hat, he. All these sounds are glottal. So yeah, Assamese also has this ha sound. So after the pace of articulation, now you should remember what is the manner of articulation. So all these sounds we can say implosive. So plosive is produced with the stricture of complete closure and sudden release. So active articulator and the passive articulators come close together and then release with implosion. So this is called the plosive sound. Then the nasal stop, the velum is lowered, air comes out through the nose, and this is called the nasal sounds. I have already explained in the oronasal process. Then comes velar plosive, the back of the tongue touches the velum, the palato-alveolar fricative, so all these things. Um, then approximant. Then approximant, um, the different things are there, so I'm not going into details. So approximant, the active articulator and the passive articulator, they don't come close together, but they are very much close connection. They don't touch. This is approximants like the ya, wa, ra. These are all approximant sounds. In the lateral sounds, the air comes from the both the sides of the tongue. You can say la. So in lateral sounds, English has got two lateral sounds. This is called la, clear la, and dark la. La and l. All these sounds. If I say the word little, so if I say the first la is the clear la, and the second and the last la is the dark la. It's l. So this is the kind of syllabic consonant velarized lateral, which is not there in most of the Indian languages. So Assamese also doesn't have. So little will be pronounced as little in Assamese. So apart from that, we have the fricative. Fricative causes friction, and like English phonemes like the fa, va, tha, the, sa, za, ha, they are all fricative sounds. Some of the languages in the world, they have got bilabial fricatives also, such as like p and bh. All this sounds not there either in English nor in Assamese. Assamese um, has only this sir, z, and her as a phonemic inventory and the fricative sounds. So after that, we have the affricate sounds. Affricates are also manner of articulation. Affricate sounds are the combination of the plosives and the fricatives. So affricates like ch and j. This is the best examples of affricates in English. But Assamese doesn't have the affricate sound. So ch is not there. So ch is substituted by fricative sir, and j is substituted by fricative z. So most of the time we have Assamese speakers have problems in pronunciation in pronouncing certain English words in Assamese. Okay, these are some of the background information of the phonetics and phonology before you. So now we are moving to the main topic of our today's discussion, that is the Assamese language, especially with reference to phonetics and phonology. So all of us know that these are from some text secondary sources. Assamese, or you can Assamese, we can say Ohomia. Ohomia is the easternmost member of the Indo-Aryan of the Indo-European language family. It is spoken as the first language by 12.8 million people, primarily in the Indian state of Assam, the neighborhoods of West Bengal, Meghalaya, Arunachal Pradesh. Today, Assamese is recognized as the official language of Indian state of Assam and one of the 22 officially recognized languages of the government of India. Assamese evolved at least before the 7th century AD from Magadhi Prakrit. Its sister languages include Bangla, Odia, Maithili, Sylheti, Angika, and other Bihari languages. Assamese languages had 8 vowel sounds and 23 consonant sounds. Assamese allows consonant clusters as word initial, medial, and final positions. So these are some of the basic information about the Assamese phonology. So now let's see what kind of sounds are there in Assamese. So vowel inventory in Assamese. So we have the E sound. So you should remember English does have the vowel distinction, the vowel length distinction. If I say it and if I say eat, there is a difference. So it means it's a pen here. But if I say I eat bread. So I can say I eat bread. I eat bread. So E and E are phonemes because the vowel length distinction is very phonemic here. But in Assamese, we don't have the vowel length distinction. So this is E, the short vowel. Close meat, we have A, then A, O, U. So these are the different vowels of Assamese. Then comes consonant inventory in Assamese. So we can say that Paba, Paba, Toda, Thoda, Gogo, Kogo. Okay, so please excuse the diacritics, they're not needed. Diacritics are mostly used in the dental sounds, which Assamese is the news. The plosive dentals are not there. So Paba, why I have given the, along with Paba, we are giving Paba, Tadha, Kaga. So this is a kind of laryngeal distinction is available in Assamese. Not only in Assamese, most of the Indo-Aryan languages, we have the aspiration distinction. Like if I say pola, pola, so the meanings are different. If I say hmm, like toka, uh, thoka, the meanings are different. So if I say dali, dhali, kali, khali, gali, gal, ghal, all these things will be different. So so that means Assamese does have the laryngeal distinction. That's why we have this phonemic distinction in terms of plus SZ or the spread glottis. Then Assamese has the nasal sounds, the bilabial ma, alveolar na, then velar nga. Then fricative, I already explained, fricatives are produced with the friction, it causes loss of friction, and this is sa, z, ha, and ha. You should remember the velar sound ha is a fricative, and this velar sound fricative is very distinctive sound in Assamese, found across the Indo-Aryan languages of India. So, yeah, there's another language called Sylheti. It also has the velar sound ha, and even if you know German, German also has this fa sound. Then approximants, Assamese rhotic ra sound is approximant. So it's different from the Hindi ra, which is a flap sound. In Assamese ra is approximant. Wa, ra, ya. Assamese raw sound is very much closer to English raw sound. The lateral la is there. So these are different consonantal phonemes in Assamese. In terms of, so you can see one side it represents the place of articulation, another side it represents the manner of articulation. Place means the, I hope you remember, place means the position in which the active articulator makes contact with the passive articulator, and manner means the strictures involved in the production of the speech sounds. Okay, now let's move to the phonological processes. So we have already defined the place and manner of articulation from the phonetic perspective. Now there's some very interesting phenomena we can see in the language, phonological processes. So phonological processes means each language has a unique phonological system that makes use of phonological processes that are specific to itself. The type of processes, however, are finite. This explains the universality of the processes and the phonological systems they give rise to. The phonotactics of Assamese language allows phonological processes like assimilation, reduplication, spirantization, gemination, aspiration, and metathesis, the different processes. So, phonological processes can give rise to another important factor in human cognition. So, if we look at the phonological processes, these phonological processes always abide by certain rules and the laws, and these rules are never uh, random, and these rules are always systematic. If some even phonological error occurs, even these phonological errors are also systematic. So it gives us some kind of clue to the as how the human mind and brain operates. We believe if we look at the generative paradigm of phonological system, generative paradigm of how the sounds are organized in the human brain and mind, we can come to know that human language, the way the sounds are organized in a kind of stratum in the human brain, and different phonological and the morphological processes operate to the sounds in a different stratum. So that's why it gives rise to different phonological theories in the subsequent time, like the lexical phonology and stratal optimality theory, etc., etc. So let's see. I'm not moving very difficult. So you just remember the way the how this the way the sound, the speech sounds are organized in the phonological domain, and they abide by certain rules and systems. And these systems are nothing but the phonological processes. And these phonological processes, here I'm going to describe assimilation. Assimilation means the one sound becomes identical or similar to the another sound because of the neighboring influence. Reduplication means doubling of segment, reduplication. Spirantization means like when the plosives turn into fricatives. This is called spirantization. Then gemination means doubling of the consonant sound. Aspiration means the what you can say, that extra phonetic effort. So you can say pa becomes pa. This is an aspiration. Then de-aspiration, when the aspiration plus spread glottis is reduced to minus spread glottis, then it is called de-aspiration. Metathesis is the interconsonantal changes in the position. This is called metathesis. So, okay, let's see what is assimilation in Assamese. In assimilation, a particular segment takes on the feature from its neighboring segment. Assamese exhibits the instance of regressive voicing assimilation. Segments occurring in the coda position tends to agree in terms of the feature voice with the following voice obstruents in the onset position. So you should remember what is onset and coda. This is some technical terms. Linguistics people know, but non-linguistics people also, it's not difficult. So we know this concept called syllable. In a syllable, we have got the nucleus. Nucleus is always the vowels, mostly in 90% most of vowels. And the segment which comes before the nucleus is called the onset, and the segment which comes after the nucleus is called coda. So generally, if we look at the markedness aspects of phonology, the markedness aspects of phonological patterns, we have seen cross-linguistically that the onsets are always stronger than the coda. So if a phonological change occurs, then mostly the changes will occur in the coda position because codas are prone to alternation or deletion. Whereas any kind of segmental neutralization, any kind of segmental feature change, alteration, everything will be resisted in the onset position. So onsets are considered to be very strong as compared to coda. So this is a kind of phonological finding, and this phonological finding has got implications from different empirical resources available in the data. So regressive voicing assimilation Assamese is blocked by nasals and liquids. So when we look at the assimilation process in Assamese, we have seen that it's mostly occurring um, within the obstruents of the between the two obstruent clusters. So it doesn't occur between the obstruent and nasals, liquids, and rhotics. This is a very universal phenomenon. It's found across world languages. So if I look at um, the sounds, what will happen? Like if I say bhat bhaji, become if we say in fast tempo, it will become bhat bhaji. Mat diya, hak diya become hak diya, kap bur, pach bar. So what is happening here? You can see the coda position is T, and the followed one is bha. So the bha is not becoming voiceless. The coda position, the segment occurring in the coda undergoes change and it becomes the. So bhat bhaji bhantia. So this is the kind of the bha, ta, the, ka, the. These are all obstruents. So we can have the regressive voicing assimilation. Codas are voiced before voice onsets. But if I look at the other examples, like 7 months, like hatma, হাত নদী, সাপ নচোৱা মানুহ, বাপ মৰিল, কাপ লৰা, কাক লোৱা, ভোক ৰৈ গল. If we look at this kind of examples, so you cannot say the doesn't turn into the as per the rule is concerned. So you can see here because the belongs to the stop and ma belongs to the nasal. Pa belongs to the stop, N belongs to the nasal. Pa belongs to the stop, L becomes a lateral. So ka becomes the last example, ka belongs to the stop and ra becomes to the rhotic. So whenever the two word consonant clusters are together, and two sounds belong to the different, you know, components, different, you can say, different class. Then there's the assimilation doesn't happen. So assimilation is blocked. So this is a very much universal kind of phenomena. So it mainly affects the coda consonants, leaving the position of the onset intact in a syllable. In case of assimilation, it is the consonant in onset position which triggers spreading of the laryngeal features of voice. And most importantly, cross-linguistically, it is the coda consonant, not the onset, which undergoes assimilation. So minus sonorant becomes plus voice whenever it is followed by plus sonorant. So minus sonorant, if I say t, t is minus sonorant, minus sonorant because it is not la or na or ra or wa or ya, or yeah. So this is a minus sonorant. So you should remember my sonorants are only the vowels, laterals, rhotics, slides, nasals. These are sonorants, and minus sonorants are plosives, fricatives, and affricates. So plosives, fricatives, and affricates, if you look at the distinctive feature approach, in distinctive feature approach, everything is represented in binary notation. So minus sonorant implies this thing. Minus sonorant becomes plus voice if it is followed by plus sonorant. So this is the example. So, but if we look at this data, we have come to conclusion that the phenomena of regressive voicing assimilation is applicable only among the voiceless obstruents in the coda position and the following voice obstruent, but is not applicable in the case of voiceless obstruents coda being followed by voice nasals and liquids. So agree, that's the kind of agree. Agree means it has to agree with the place and manner of articulation. Agree is stronger between similar constituents having some sonority value. So here the new concept has been introduced, sonority. Sonority. The sonority is a phonetic feature which which rises from the margin to the nucleus and again it fails. So some vowels are the most sonorous sounds, then followed by rhotics, laterals, and the least sonorous sounds at the stop. So this is important thing. So if you look at the sonority, so most of the obstruents agree in terms of sonority. That's why this voicing assimilation happens. In case it doesn't happen. So another feature you can say the R assimilation in Kamrupi Assamese. Kamrupi is a dialect of Assamese spoken in Kamrup region. So if you see the things like can Bordevta become Bodevta, Kirti become Kitti, Durla become Dulla, Poda become Podda, Purti become Putti, Murti become Mutti, Murtu become Muttu. So here you can say the R turns into the stop. In the above instances, rhotic sound R in the coda position of the first syllable gets laminated to the coronal consonants T, D, and L in the onset position of the following syllable. Because the porda, the two syllables are there, the ra turns into the in conformity with the following onset. But what happens if we look at some of the other examples, like Burma, as for the law, it should have Burma should have been Bomma, Borpira should have been Bokpira, Sorma becomes should have been Somma, Burbok should have been Bubbok, Korma becomes should have been Kumma, Durbal should have been become Dubbol, or something Kharga should have been become Khogga, Purna should have been Punna. So this doesn't happen. So what does it talk about? That means it is not only about the onset coda assimilation, but also it about what kind of segment, what kind of place of articulation. So in this example, the place of articulation determines whether the process of assimilation and gemination will happen or not. So whenever you do research, you have to find out whether the place of articulation or the manner of articulation, whether the plus sonorant or the minus sonorant, all the distinctive feature theory you need to explain step by step to represent such kind of cases. So it's a very interesting thing. Now let's see spirantization and aspiration in Assamese. So spirantization, mostly the weakening phenomena. So fortition process. There's a concept in phonology called fortition and lenation. Fortition is mostly the process of strengthening, and lenation is mostly the process of weakening. Fortition processes is aspiration attested with the word initial. Aspiration, you can say the extra puff of air. So it's attested with the word initial and foot initial position, and the similar manner lenation processes spirantization occurs in the word final or medial position. There is no language in the world which does not show the pattern of lenation or fortition of one kind or another, either diachronic or synchronic. Was spoken by Backley and Finia 2006. Spirantization as a lenation phenomena is a process in which the segment turns into features along with features associated with it. Re 1998 claims that spirantization in most cases occurs in the context where target stop is adjacent to a plus continuing segment, pre-vocalic, post-vocalic, or intervocalic position. So these are different interpretations of spirantization. What happens in Assamese code, de-aspiration and spirantization? In Assamese, what happens? Coda is de-aspirated when it's followed by an aspirated onset. So when the two sounds are together in adjacent position, if the both the sounds are aspirated, mostly the aspiration associated with the coda gets de-aspirated, but the aspiration associated with the onset does not undergo this process. De-aspiration in Assamese doesn't apply to word final position. um, the coda is deaspirated when it's followed by another aspirated stop in the onset position. It implies two adjacent aspirated stops can't occur. So this is a concept called OCP or obligatory contour principles. Two segments having the similar feature cannot occur in adjacent position. Aspiration is mostly prominent in the onset positions and word initial positions, whereas it gets lost in the coda position. Aspiration is one of the characteristic features of aspiration in the languages. As I have told you earlier, that we have the aspiration distinction or the laryngeal distinction in terms of aspiration in most of the Indic languages. Hindi has, Bangla has, Assamese has, most of the Indic languages have this aspiration distinction. But in the coda, the aspiration Assamese, the final stop undergoes only one transformation, but in the case of spirants, the feature plus continuant blocks the feature aspirate glottis, although they are bound to lose plus continuant. But if an Assamese word ends with fa, becomes pa, not pa, but tha turns into ta. So in order to explain the derivation of the form bor of kini, become bor of kini. So I'll explain to this. what is happening. Let's see the examples of the aspiration data in Assamese. So you can see the mat, got, con. If you say in slow tempo, then got con will becomes got con. But if you speak in fast tempo, what is happening? The aspiration associated with the coda undergoes change, and got con becomes got con, rot con become rot con, at bhag become at bhag, at khila become at khila, kat phota become kat phota, bak bhalu become bak bhalu. It happens across languages. If you look at the data from Bangla, if you look at the data from Hindi, Bhojpuri, almost all the Indian languages have this the OCP constraints. But Assamese, the sounds ending with F is different. Borof Kini become Borof Kini, but in Bangla and all it become Borop. So it reduces the aspiration. So why is it so? The coda is deaspirated when it's followed by another aspirated stop in downset position. It implies two adjacent aspirated stops can't occur. Star OCP is a very highly ranked constraint. I'm sure that here the students or the participants are not very much um, apt in the technical terms, so I'm not using much technical terms, and I'm not showing any kind of theoretical representation. I'm just showing you as how the phonological processes are available across the languages. So now you can see here, if you come something ends at cough, map, so it turns into cough, muff. But sometimes like a pit, also it becomes like the sock. Sometimes parentization of wheeler stops in the coda position is rare. Sock, some people say sock. Deck, they say dech. The word initial and medial positions parentization never occurs in Assamese. Like poly, nowadays, I have heard some, especially the youngsters, they make it poly as fully Pulam, Ekoni Pulam Gamusa. So this particular word phrase, people say Ekoni Pulam Gamusa. Nowadays people are saying, but if we look at the standard as means, generally the part of substitution it happens only at the end. But now because of the influence of English and other languages, I could see here this in Hindi it is very common. Like mostly the bilabial aspirated plosive pa is gone. So it's mostly the labiodental fa is very much in that is available. So in what initial and medial positions parentization never occurs in Assamese, all these things, but pa becomes fa at the word end when followed by liquids, nasals, and fricatives. However, when it's followed by obstruents, it becomes pa or va. This is a very interesting thing in Assamese. Now let's see another process called gemination. Gemination, I have already told you, the gemination is a doubling of the consonant. Gemination is an articulation of a consonant for a longer period of time than that of a single instance of the same type of consonant. There's some segments which are frequently geminated while others rarely undergo gemination. Geminate sonorants are cross-linguistically marked. Geminate sonorants means yeah, wah. These are Gemini sonorants. But if your Gemini stops are very much available in the world languages like Tata, Baba, Kak, and the Kaka, all these things. Kawahara 2005, they say about the relative sonority of a geminate positively correlates with its markedness. Podesma also hypothesized that phonological dispreference against sonorant geminates exists because these geminates are easily confusable with corresponding singletons. So now the question arises why I am giving this theoretical description before each process in Assamese. So whenever you look at the data of a particular language, it is your responsibility to see what is happening cross-linguistically because we speak human languages. So Assamese is a distinctive languages of its own that we accept. But being a human language, it has have some kind of universal features which are there in other related languages belonging to the same language family. So, like gemination, like if you say the gemination of approximants across gemination of the sonorants across linguistically marked, but geminate stops across not cross linguistically marked. Geminate as stops are unmarked segments. So Assamese also follows this pattern. So let's see, this is a pattern you can see here. Although I have not discussed about optimality theory, but this pattern is very much there. Geminate glide is very much Higher rank constraint, the geminate liquids and geminate nasal. This is called GGLLNN. So GG means star geminate glides. So star geminate glides means geminate glides should be bad. That means star means no. No geminate glides is higher ranked. Then star LL means geminate laterals. Star NN means geminate nasals. So this is supported by cross-linguistic geminate inventories and the phonological alternations. So now one process we are going to see. We know this Assamese has been derived from Sanskrit. And in the course of time, Sanskrit, Pali, Prakrit, Upper Brahms, and the modern Indic languages have arrived. So before discussing the gemination process in Assamese, let's see what is happening in the Middle Indic languages patterns in especially Sanskrit. So, what is happening? Most of the Indo-Aryan languages that vault internal obstruents are geminated when they precede the liquids and approximants, and they are like ya, ra, la, and wa. Since Assamese is a modern Indo-Aryan language, we see the preponderance of Sanskrit loans in them. So we call them Tatsama words or the Tadbhava words. But with the passage of time, these words have developed independent phonotactic patterns with the uses of different repair strategies. However, the orthography still retains the original Sanskrit phonological pattern. So if you look at the orthographical patterns, you can see whatever the Sanskrit a word is there, the similar kind of things that we have retained in orthography. But as far as the pronunciation of these words are concerned, they don't abide by the Sanskrit phonotactic. So Assamese develops its own idiosyncratic patterns of gemination. So if you look at the word Satya, this is Sanskrit. So what is happening because of ya, the ta gets geminated. Because of wa, the ta gets geminated. Because of la, the ka gets geminated. Because of ya, da gets geminated. But atma doesn't. Because of ma doesn't, ta doesn't geminate it. So Satya, Tattva, Shukla, Padya, all these things are happening. Sorry. Okay, so what is happening? Assamese gemination, what is happening? Obstruent gemination followed by rhotic sounds in Assamese. So we cannot see any kind of changes between uh, Assamese and the Sanskrit. So Assamese Putra, Assamese also Putra. Only the Shwa is substituted by the round vowels. Samudra become Homudra, the Sa is substituted by Ho. Vikram become Bikram, ashram become asram. So this is not no change between Sanskrit and Assamese as far as gemination is concerned. Let's see what is happening whenever the ya sound. Satya, Satya in Assamese becomes Hatta. Nepatya, it become Nepatya. Vakya become Vaikya. Mrityu become Mrityu. Padya become Padya. Gatya become Gatya. In mostly the colloquial uses, we don't use. So what is happening? The ya is dropped, and as a kind of metathesis, e is added. Like Hatya become Hatta. Hatta কথা কোৱা, like Hatta. So what is happening? Ya turns into e. So this is a kind of pattern you can see. This is called metathesis. So if the word by wa, what is happening in Sanskrit and Assamese? So if it is wa, tattva become tatta. So here nothing happens. The wa gets dropped in Assamese. Mahatva become mahatta. Satitva become fatita. Ashwa become assa. So these are some of the changes that you can see in Assamese and all. However, the problem is the ON, the obstruent nasal sequence is in Atma where the T never geminates. So the only post-obstruent sonorants. Although the N is also sonorant, right? Remember sonorant plus sonorants and nasals are also plus sonorant. But the only post-obstruent sonorants which initiate geminations are la, ra, ya, and wa. After this, let's see another example. Another example is called echo-word reduplication in Assamese. Reduplication is usually described as a very productive morphological process where the root word is reduplicated partially or in whole and then affixed to the stem. It may be a suffix, prefix, or even the infix, depending on the language. So the default reduplicant Assamese in echo word formation is sa, but if the base begins with sa or za, the reduplicant is ta. Let's see the example. If I say bon, then in the reduplicant, if I say etc. process, you can say bon son. You can say kam sam, toka soka, pura sura, bhara sara, thikona sikona, um, Dharsar, Hori Sori, Gos Sauce. Is most of the example you can say the default reduplicant is Sa. This process, so it also satisfies some kind of universal markedness principle because as means like the coronals are always unmarked. So coronal segments are unmarked segments in world languages. But if we look at the other Indic languages like Bangla, so you can say boitoi. So Hindi, mota wota, but in Tamil it becomes Puligili, then Kannada it is Kannuginnu, then Marathi is a Kalabila. So you can see here, although the coronals are considered unmarked, but in some of the languages it is very much like, especially the Velar sound, Gili and Gino, all these sounds are not very much marked. So this is a very marked sound, but it also becomes, you know, the reduplicant. So Assamese word, mostly you can say the first consonant in the reduplicant is replaced by S regardless of the sound in the base word. This implies that the fixed segment sir is always used. But if the base begins with sir, the fixed segment changes to the. But both sir and the share the same place of articulation coronals, although the manner of articulation may vary from each other. So one is sir is an, we know this is a fricative and the is a plosive. So if it begins with the vowel, what will happen? If the base begins with vowel, the base is the etc. construction, then again it also satisfies. Becomes apel, sapel, ingrazi, singrazi, uttar, suttar in this word. Even like I have not mentioned here in this line that even if something begins with consonant cluster, like prem, sem, pratham, satham, even in all these things, mrityu, sittu, all these things, you can see here the base begins with the consonant cluster, but the reduplicant, it doesn't take the consonant cluster. So it doesn't become prem, swam, it becomes prem, sem, all these things. This is also very interesting. Then let's see loanword phonology in Assamese. That is also a very interesting phenomena in the languages. Loanwords, you know, the most of the time we borrow loans from different languages, and when loanwords means we from other foreign languages we borrow at such a particular time, we should remember the language is never a static phenomena. Language is always has some kind of connection with different resources in different other languages. So this is a phenomenological contact and convergence as because of commerce, because of urbanization, liberalization, and different like social factors, we are bound to interact with the speakers of other languages. As a process, what happens, our own we adopt different words from the outside languages, from other gamut of vocabulary. But the most important thing is that when we adopt and when we borrow the words from other languages, when it travels to our languages, the phonotactic patterns of our own languages plays a very important role in the adaptation process. So what happens if certain sounds are not in the phonemic inventory of your language? So, but the foreign language, it does have the other foreign elements. So when it gives the foreign phonemes, foreign sounds in your language, it tries to filter those sounds and tries to substitute those sounds with the sounds which are available in your language. So the plus continuant sound become minus continuant sound, like English word chicken, Assamese it becomes chicken. The fan becomes pan. So what is happening? Plus continuant minus distributed is like plus continuant is most important. Plus continuant is the thing, the cha is become things, then minus distributed becomes plus sorry. So fan is a plus continuant sound, the fa, so it becomes minus continuant pan, and minus distributed becomes plus distributed. So in this way you can see different patterns. Then comes prothesis. It seems to be the best option to avoid onset and coda consonant clusters, mostly in the consonant cluster SK and ST. English words cool, most of the Assamese speakers they will say is cool. Then epanthesis also happens. So if the consonant cluster is broken and one segment is inserted between the two consonant clusters, it becomes epanthesis. So most of the time it's a slate, a silet in Assamese. So silet is becoming a kind of Assamese word. Then nobody says the silet is an English word. The slate turns into silet, The school turns into school. The components N and L are not syllabic in Assamese phonology, and hence a loan adaptation leads to the emergence of epenthetic vowels to adhere to the notion of repressed strategy of Assamese phonology. So you can say table, cotton, mutton, all these words are becoming Assamese, all like table, cotton, mutton, all these things. Cousin become cousin. So this is very downward adaptation, and this process is very effective. And if you look at the adaptation process in different languages, you can see that these adaptation processes are always systematic. So this is I'm giving some examples. This is very important. Like special become spatial, like station become station, school become school, scale become scale, glass become gilas. Sometimes cream become kirim. All these processes, these things happen in Assamese word. So let's say evolution of the Assamese orthographic system. So orthography is also very important phenomena. So I have given you different papers of mine that I have written throughout in this span of 10 years. So which will be helpful, that which I have done for the Assamese phonology and phonetics. So Assamese script is one of the important scripts of Eastern India. The origin of Assamese script can be traced back to Guptas. There's a Brahmin script. The evolution of the script can be divided: Old Assamese script, Medieval Assamese script, and Modern Assamese script. So this is mostly history. I have taken it from secondary sources. But let's see what I was doing. This Assamese vowel consonant chart. So you can see here the sounds, whatever orthography we have, and what kind of sounds we have. So mostly, if you look at the orthography, you can see we have the nasal sound, different nasal sounds. We have palatal nasal sounds. We have, then we have like affricate sounds also. We have as far as the alphabet is concerned. But if you look at the phonetic form, and if you look at the phonemic inventories, those sounds are not there. Especially if you look at the sa and cha. But Assamese we produce both the sa and cha as sa. There's no distinction. But in orthography it is there. So the number of aksharas used in Assamese script and the phonemes in Assamese is not identical. There's bound to be some mismatch between the graphemes and the phonemes in Assamese. The presence of voiceless affricate in Assamese orthography doesn't have a phonetic correspondence in the Assamese sound system. The same thing I'm saying. The presence of voiceless affricate. Voiceless affricate means cha. In Assamese orthography doesn't have a phonetic correspondence in the Assamese sound system. So sa and cha, these two sounds are like neutralized and they become sa. But if we look at the speech of the young generation, I have noticed that mostly the young generation, they have started using cha in their speech. It might be because of the influence of preponderance of English in their day-to-day life. So instead of Chaudhary, they'll say Chaudhary, the chicken, this words they have come to us. So it's this responsibility of the phoneticians or the phonologists or the workers or the language people from Assamese linguistics. They should identify whether the phonemes, is it true that Assamese doesn't have this kind of sound? It's a very conservative approach. Okay, Assamese doesn't have this sound, but some phonemes might occur and some sounds might be dropped from the language. Recently, we have found some studies of Telugu sounds. The Telugu retroflex sounds are very much dropped by the youngsters of the population. So in this way, I'm also trying to think that maybe Assamese young generation, they're trying to adapt the voiceless African sound in Assamese speech, not only in orthography. So Assamese phonemic inventory allows only alveolar fricative sa and velar fricative ha. It doesn't have sha, but it does have the alphabetic preponderance. The alphabetic correspondence sha is also there. There, in contrast to distribution, as a substitution of one sound with the other creates a semantic difference. So if we look at the example like sap and sat, then hap and hat. So you can see sat and hat. Sat a week and hat means seven. Sap means pressure. Hap means snake. However, in orthography, the palato-alveolar sh and retroflex sh do exist. As far as the phonetic output is concerned, they are either realized as sa or sometimes ha. Orthographic form like sh, shram, then shiva, Actually, we write Shuba, like Shram, you can say, but the phonetic form is Strom and Hiba. But orthographically, we are trying to retain the same Sanskrit form. So there are some two debates. Some people try to claim or ask for the spelling reforms, and also that the language will be easy for the persons to learn and all. But another school of thought believes that the spelling reforms might distort the etymological link existing across the languages. So the different things. So today we have discussed about. I think I have taken more time than required, but these are very relevant themes. I have not gone deeper into those issues. I have just thrown them open for you to think about these lines. So apart from these phonological processes, these are some of the things that you might consider for your research if you want to do PhD, if you want to do some research in phonology and phonetics. So vowel distinctions in Assamese and its different varieties. So why I have given the vowel distinctions? Because vowels are very much, subject to change across the dialects. So if we look at the dialectal alternations in different dialect varieties, we have seen that mostly the languages undergo changes, languages undergo alterations on the basis of the vowels, or the basis because of the vowels. Consonants don't make much differences with vowel differences. So the vowel space and vowel distinctions we can establish, and you can see how the vowels are different in different dialects of Assamese. Then descriptive account of Assamese dialects and their phonological systems. Even like although the standard Assamese has been described, but there are different varieties, the Kamrupi variety, Golkoria variety, Nolkoria variety, like Hibo, Hagorio, and different, even regional and social dialects. They have not been explored in detail so far. And even if they explored, they are done in Assamese, that nobody has done, come to know about the researchers in this area. So I think people, if they do different dialectal variations as far as the phonological sound patterns are concerned, it will be great contribution. Then comes the context and convergence of sound patterns with reference to Assamese and other languages. Context and convergence, because I have told earlier that two languages are occurring in always exist. Two languages flourish in close collaboration with each other, and sometimes we tend to borrow some aspects of phonology and morphology from one another. So the convergence is very important, and what kind of sound patterns, what kind of sounds are mostly affected in the convergence process, and what kind of sounds are generally they are not affected. So we can have the hierarchy of sounds in terms of place and manner and laryngeal property, which can be helpful in having a broader understanding of the phonological process in strength theory and in onset coda symmetries and all these things. Then phonological process in Assamese we have there. So modern generative paradigms is optimality theory and universal markedness principles and all. So I have seen different phonological processes are there, but I have given lots of OT analysis of different phonological processes. But still there are many processes which have not been done from the perspective of modern generative perspective. So people can link up these things and try to correlate, phonological system with different cognitive processes and theories of representation. Then you people can pick up suprasegmental aspects such as stress, intonation in Assamese, even Assamese English, how the Assamese English is different from standard RP and all, how the patterns are different. We can have a research on that. Then onset coda asymmetries in different dialects of Assamese. My PhD thesis was on onset coda asymmetries. There is the role of strangulations in the patterning of segmental speech sounds. But I think we can see the whole theoretical gamut of onset coda asymmetries in the domain of different dialects of Assamese. So we have not done in Kamrupi, we have not done in Nolgoria, we have not done in Gwalporia, different varieties, not only the lower Assamese variety. In the upper Assamese varieties, also lots of differences are there. We cannot generalize that this is a particular Assamese we have to speak. There's so many patterns are there. So my thesis is based on the standard Assamese. So let's see, the different dialects of Assamese, do they conform to these patterns of standard Assamese or not? Okay, that's all. Thanks for listening to me. If you have any doubts, I don't think there will be any doubts, but if you have any doubts, you can ask me. Are you there?
Thank you, Dr. Datta, for the enriching talk. Now, I'd like to ask some questions uh, from the chat box. Uh,
Hmm?
the first question is, when you say phonology of Assamese, will you please describe a bit about the data which you have accommodated here?
Okay, so this is mostly the data from my research papers that I have written, but I have not given here the in the references and all. So phonological data mostly I have collected from the speakers speaking Assamese, and since I'm a native speaker, so I have the intuitive ability also how do the sounds behave and all. So if you want, I can give you the the list of the references. If you want. Yeah,
Yeah, sure. Uh, Sir, you presented one example, Kabur.
yeah.
Kabur. My question is why Bur? It should be transcribed as Bor if you are discussing standard Assamese.
Okay. So see, there's some people who say bore, there's some people who say boor. So it's not the matter of u and Here is a matter. Here, if you look at the data, it's mostly about the regressive voicing assimilation, where I'm saying that the p turns a p, the minus voice of p associated with the minus voice becomes plus voice in b because of the following b. So there are some people, it's very difficult to say the kabur or kabur. So it's very much there. So it, the question that the issue that I have shown here in my data is nothing to do with the vowel. It's mostly with the consonant.
Okay, sir. Uh, so the next question. Two adjacent aspirated stops cannot occur together. Will you explain this a bit from an articulatory point of view?
Okay, so if you look at the two, whatever I am saying that two aspirated stops. So if I say bag, bhaluk, so whatever is happening, the you can say gha becomes ga, but the bhaluk, the gha is the aspirated. So what I was saying that OCP constraint, here I'm not talking about the articulatory perspective. Here I was talking from the OCP constraint and mostly from the onset coda asymmetry. So bag bhaluk, the gha is in the coda position and the bha is in the onset position. So it doesn't become bag baluk. It becomes bag baluk. So it's mostly the feature associated with the aspiration. The aspiration feature associated with the coda generally undergo change, but the feature associated with the onset doesn't undergo change. This is the example I have shown.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes.
The next question is by Projita. What is your comment on regional varieties of a language while data collection is in question for comparing Indian languages?
Can you repeat?
Yeah. What is your comment on regional varieties of a language while data
Hmm.
collection is in question for comparing Indian languages?
Yeah, you can see this is the question of how we consider. So mostly as a linguist, we are not we are giving equal importance to all the variations. Although like I have used the word dialect here, but dialect is not a very positive politically correct word. So you can see the varieties. So different varieties are there. And if you look at the Indian languages, that means Indian languages does not mean only the constitutionally recognized languages, but it can refer to different varieties. If within a language itself, we have different varieties are there. Right? So in Assamese, if we consider different upper Assamese varieties, I know lower Assamese varieties are there. So it is very much fine. Like if you look at the but you need to give the references. Where have you collected the data, and how did you represent? And even if you're an Assamese speaker, whenever you write a research paper, you should take the data from the other sources. Not you should not record yourself. So sometimes we have the biases. So whenever we produce the sounds, if we know the theory, so we have the tendency of producing the sound the way the theory demands. So it is, I always appreciate if the researcher, although he must be having the linguistic aptitude of the language, but he should record other speech sounds and then see how, and data will speak for itself. Like it's very interesting.
Right. So the last question is there any reference to IPA for a language data transcription? Any suggestion?
Uh, okay. So there's a book, I don't remember. There's a Professor Pramod Pandey. He has compiled a book on the Indic languages, sound patterns of Indic languages. So mostly, I think 700 languages of India spoken here. They have documented the symbols, the patterns, the phonetic restrictions. Everything has been mentioned. So I think if you go through the data, it will be interesting. And some of the, the maybe Rutgers University, if you look at the data set of Rutgers, the sound patterns, even maybe SOAS might be having some data set of different Indian languages. So it might be helpful for you. And look at the previous researches they have done in your languages, especially in Assamese. So maybe Guluk Sandra Goswami, right? Then I have written, Sakuntala Mahanta has written. So try to collect the sources from them. Then try to see if you find some kind of differences in their data representation. Banikanta Kakoti is a little bit old, right? So the language has undergone much changes. So even if you look at the Disi Goswami, then the things are little becoming different. The language keeps on changing. That's what I'm saying. The predom the returning of the affricate sounds I have seen in some of the speech of the youngsters, which people might say that Assamese doesn't have affricates, but some people produce affricates. So we cannot negate that, okay, Assamese cannot have affricates and all, because language keeps on changing and we have to listen to them carefully and then we have to transcribe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Datta. The talk has been very enriching and informative. Now, my colleague Saurabh has to make an announcement for the next series. So over to you, Saurabh.
Yeah, thank you, Priya, and thank you, sir, for your wonderful talk.
Thank you.
There's an announcement. We'll speak this in Assamese. So, অহা 13 ছেপ্টেম্বৰ তাৰিখে অধ্যাপক মহেশ্বৰ নেওগ স্মাৰক ন্যাস পৰিষদৰ উদ্যোগত অধ্যাপক মহেশ্বৰ নেওগৰ জীৱন আৰু কৰ্মজীৱন সম্পৰ্কত এখনি বক্তৃতা আৰু আলোচনা অনুষ্ঠান আয়োজন কৰা হৈছে, আৰু সেয়া আমাৰ কুহিপাঠৰ ইউটিউব চেনেল যোগে পোনপটীয়াকৈ সম্প্ৰচাৰ কৰা হ'ব। আৰু ইয়াৰ বাবে ৰেজিষ্ট্ৰেশ্যন সম্পৰ্কীয় লিংকৰ বাবে আমাৰ কুহিপাঠৰ ফেচবুক পেজ চাব পাৰে বা অথবা learnassamese.in যোগে উপলব্ধ হ'ব। Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.